People don't realize this yet, but there's a quiet contradiction sitting right in front of us. On one hand, we're spending billions every year on multivitamins, supplements, powders, pills, gummies, anything that promises to cover nutritional gaps. On the other hand, there's a single living organism grown in the ground that quietly checks off most of those boxes by itself. No capsule, no factory, no branding, and almost no one is planting it. That's not an exaggeration. I've spent years looking at nutrition from a practical angle, not from labels, not from influencer talking points, but from real-world outcomes, historical diets, agricultural data, and what actually sustains people long-term without marketing hype. The more I dug into this space, the stranger the gap became. Because if nutrition were judged purely by results, this tree would already be everywhere. But it isn't. And once you understand why, you start seeing the supplement industry and modern food systems very differently. I want to be clear about something upfront. I'm not anti-supplement. I've used them. I've tested them. I still think they have a place in very specific situations. But most people today aren't supplementing true deficiencies. They're compensating for food systems that stopped prioritizing nutrient density decades ago. That's where this story really begins. Because this tree doesn't boost anything, it doesn't promise miracles, and it doesn't hack biology. It simply does what food used to do before everything became optimized for shelf life, shipping distance, and profit margins. And that's exactly why it's invisible. Most people first encounter nutrition through products, not plants. Through labels, not leaves. Through recommendations, not ecosystems. So the idea that a single tree, one that grows fast, thrives in poor soil, and needs almost no maintenance could rival a multivitamin sounds ridiculous at first. It should sound ridiculous. That skepticism is healthy. I had it too. When I first heard the claims surrounding this tree, I did what I always do. I ignored the hype and went straight to the data, nutrient profiles, agricultural studies, long-term use in real populations, not testimonials, not marketing, just evidence and outcomes over time. And what stood out wasn't that this tree was better than multivitamins. It was that, in many everyday contexts, it made them feel redundant. Most multivitamins are built around isolated nutrients. Vitamin A here, vitamin C there, iron, calcium, magnesium, all measured in neat percentages of daily value. On paper, that looks efficient, but nutrition doesn't work in isolation. Absorption matters, synergy matters, the presence of fiber matters. Context matters. This tree doesn't offer nutrients in isolation. It offers them together, in combinations that evolved alongside human digestion. That doesn't make it magical. It makes it historically normal. And that's exactly why it doesn't fit modern narratives, because you can't patent a tree. Before even naming it, it's more important to understand what it consistently provides. When analyzed nutritionally, the leaves contain meaningful amounts of protein, iron, calcium, potassium, magnesium, vitamin A precursors, vitamin C, and several B vitamins. Not exaggerated influencer-style comparisons, but stable, repeatable nutrient density across different growing regions. And it does this without rich soil, chemical fertilizers, or intensive care. If you've ever tried growing nutrient-dense food, you know how rare that combination actually is. This tree thrives where other crops struggle. Poor soil, heat stress, irregular rainfall, it keeps producing. That raises an uncomfortable question. If something is nutrient-dense, resilient, easy to grow, and historically consumed across generations, why isn't it part of mainstream agriculture? The answer isn't a conspiracy, it's economics. Modern food systems reward scalability, uniformity, transport durability, and predictability. Fresh leaves that spoil quickly don't ship well across continents. Trees that feed families directly don't generate recurring consumer demand. Multivitamins do. They're shelf-stable, easy to standardize, easy to brand, and easy to sell again and again. This tree solves problems once. That's why it stays local. That's why it stays traditional. That's why it thrives in backyards and small communities but disappears from grocery aisles. Some people tune out at this point. They hear tree and assume this is about some obscure superfood trend or survivalist fantasy. It isn't. This tree is already consumed by millions of people around the world. Just not marketed to you. And that distinction matters. Because when nutrition isn't marketed, it's often because it doesn't need to be. In regions where this tree is commonly used, it isn't treated like a supplement. It's treated like spinach, like kale, like something you add to meals because that's just normal. There are no dosage charts, no cycles, no claims of optimization. Just food, and that's the first clue that this tree operates outside modern hype cycles. Now, does this tree replace multivitamins? Not in the way people usually mean that. It doesn't replicate exact dosages. It doesn't guarantee precision. It doesn't treat deficiencies. Anyone claiming that is overselling it. What it does replace for many people is the routine dependence on supplementation by raising baseline nutrient intake through whole food. That's a very different claim, and it's one supported by both nutritional analysis and historical dietary patterns. If you look at traditional diets that included this tree, you don't see supplement dependency. You see sufficiency achieved through food. That doesn't mean those diets were perfect, but it does mean they weren't built around pills. That's something we've normalized extremely quickly in the modern world. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Have you ever taken a multivitamin for months and felt absolutely nothing? No noticeable difference, no clarity, no energy shift, just routine compliance. If so, you're not alone. That doesn't mean supplements are useless. It means baseline nutrition matters more than optimization. And you can't optimize what's missing at the foundation. This tree works at the foundation level, which is why it feels boring. Slow, steady, undramatic, and boring nutrition is usually the most effective kind. When researchers compared dried leaf powder from this tree to common dietary gaps, a pattern appears. Iron levels that are meaningful. Calcium in plant-usable forms. Protein content higher than most leafy greens. Antioxidants that don't spike aggressively but sustain over time. No miracle, just consistency. And consistency doesn't sell headlines. Now let's talk about growth. This tree grows fast, sometimes shockingly fast. Leaves can be harvested multiple times per year. It tolerates drought. It tolerates poor soil. It doesn't require industrial infrastructure. If you were designing a crop specifically for food resilience and nutrition security, you would struggle to do better. And yet, it's rarely included in Western agricultural planning. Why? Because food security isn't a primary market driver unless there's a crisis. Profit is. And profit prefers annual crops, proprietary seeds, fertilizers, and long distribution chains, not perennial trees that families can propagate themselves. Once you see this, you start noticing how many nutrient-dense plants sit quietly outside mainstream systems. Not because they don't work, but because they work too well without intermediaries. The tree we've been talking about is Moringa oleifera. Sometimes called the drumstick tree, sometimes mislabeled as a superfood, sometimes ignored entirely. But labels don't matter here. Function does. And Moringa oleifera functions as one of the most nutrient-dense, accessible, low-input food sources humans have cultivated when it's used correctly and realistically, not as a cure, not as a miracle, as food. Once you put Moringa oleifera side by side with a typical multivitamin, the differences become obvious very quickly, but not in the way most people expect. Multivitamins look impressive on labels. They're designed to. You see long lists of nutrients, high percentages of daily values, sometimes even numbers that exceed 100%. But those numbers assume something that rarely holds true in real life, which is that absorption is equal across nutrients, across people, and across delivery forms. In practice, that's rarely the case. With multivitamins, you're dealing with isolated compounds, iron without fiber, calcium without the surrounding plant matrix. Vitamins stripped from food, stabilized, compressed, and then expected to behave the same way they do in nature. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. That inconsistency is one of the reasons people report wildly different experiences from the exact same product. The body isn't a calculator. It's a system. What makes Moringa oleifera fundamentally different isn't that it contains more of everything. It doesn't. What it offers is balance. The nutrients come packaged with fiber, plant compounds, and naturally occurring ratios that slow digestion and reduce the sharp spikes you often get from isolated supplementation. That matters, especially for people who are already eating reasonably well and aren't dealing with diagnosed deficiencies. Protein is a good example. On paper, the protein content of moringa leaves surprises a lot of people. Not because it competes with animal protein, but because it's unusually high for a leafy green. More importantly, it's consumed alongside micronutrients that support protein utilization. That doesn't make it a replacement for major protein sources, and anyone claiming that is overselling it. What it does make it is a meaningful contributor to overall intake, especially in diets where protein quality matters more than sheer quantity. Iron is another area where hype often derails the conversation. Yes, Moringa oleifera contains iron. No, it should not be treated as a medical solution for iron deficiency. Those are two very different things. Where it shines is in supporting baseline intake for people who are not deficient, but also not consistently hitting iron-rich foods. Because it's consumed as food, not a concentrated pill, the risk profile looks very different. Lower spikes, lower stress on the system, and fewer of the digestive complaints people associate with iron supplements. Calcium tells a similar story. The presence of calcium in moringa leaves is real and measurable, but what matters more is that it comes alongside magnesium, vitamin K precursors, and plant compounds that support utilization. Again, this doesn't replace targeted supplementation when it's needed. It simply reduces the likelihood that supplementation becomes necessary in the first place for otherwise healthy individuals. This is the pattern you see again and again. Moringa oleifera doesn't outperform supplements at their own game. It changes the game entirely. Instead of trying to correct problems after they appear, it quietly supports the conditions that prevent those problems from becoming severe. That distinction is subtle, and subtlety doesn't do well on social media. Another thing that rarely gets discussed is dosage. Supplements thrive on precision, milligrams, percentages, exact numbers, that creates a false sense of control. With food, especially leafy plants, intake is naturally self-regulating. You eat what fits into meals. You stop when you're full. That built-in feedback loop reduces the risk of chronic overconsumption, which is something people almost never talk about with multivitamins. Overuse is one of the most common mistakes people make with moringa, especially in powder form. When something gets labeled a superfood, the instinct is to concentrate it, isolate it, and consume it aggressively. That's exactly how people end up disappointed or uncomfortable. Traditionally, Moringa oleifera was eaten fresh or lightly dried in moderate amounts as part of meals. Not as a daily megadose, not as a shortcut, and certainly not as a replacement for an otherwise poor diet. This is also where Western adoption often goes wrong. Instead of integrating the plant into food culture, it gets stripped down into powders, capsules, and extracts, then marketed with exaggerated claims. At that point, it stops behaving like food and starts behaving like a supplement, complete with all the same limitations and misunderstandings. There's also an important conversation to be had about who should not rely on this tree. If someone has a diagnosed nutrient deficiency, gastrointestinal absorption issues, or specific medical conditions, whole foods alone may not be sufficient. That's not a failure of moringa. That's just reality. Food supports health, it doesn't replace medical care. Anyone who blurs that line isn't being honest. Another overlooked factor is taste and compliance. Nutritional value means nothing if people won't actually eat the food. Fresh Moringa oleifera leaves have a mild, slightly earthy flavor, closer to spinach than to anything exotic. That makes them easy to integrate into soups, stews, eggs, or sautéed dishes. That ease matters far more than nutrient charts. Sustainable nutrition is boring, repeatable, and culturally adaptable. This brings us back to the original question. If this tree is so practical, so nutrient-dense, and so easy to grow, why isn't it everywhere? The answer, again, isn't ignorance. It's incentives. There is no industry push behind backyard food security. There's no recurring revenue in teaching people how to grow a tree that feeds them for years. So awareness spreads slowly through communities, not campaigns. And yet, every time food prices spike, every time supply chains break, every time people start questioning why basic nutrition feels so complicated, this tree resurfaces, quietly, without fanfare, doing what it's always done. If you've made it this far, I'm curious. Have you ever tried improving your nutrition by adding food instead of adding pills? Or have you ever bought into a supplement because it sounded scientific, only to realize it didn't change much? That's not a judgment. That's a shared experience for a lot of people. The real takeaway here isn't that Moringa oleifera is the answer to everything. It's that our baseline expectations around nutrition have shifted so far toward products that we've forgotten how powerful, simple, resilient foods can be. When nutrition comes from the ground instead of a bottle, it tends to be slower, quieter, and more reliable. At this point, the most important thing to clear up is the myth that Moringa oleifera works because it is rare, exotic, or somehow hidden from the modern world. It isn't. It works because it behaves like food is supposed to behave. It provides nutrients in moderate amounts, in combinations the body recognizes, and in a form that fits naturally into daily meals. The mistake people make is assuming effectiveness has to feel dramatic. Real nutrition almost never does. Another common myth is that if something is natural, it must be universally safe or universally beneficial. That's not how reality works. Moringa oleifera is no exception. Consumed in reasonable food level amounts, it's well tolerated by most people. Pushed aggressively as a concentrated powder or extract, it can cause discomfort, inconsistency, or disappointment. That doesn't mean it's harmful, it means context matters. Food works best when it stays food. There's also a tendency to frame this tree as a solution to broken diets, and that's unfair to both the plant and the people trying to eat better. Moringa oleifera doesn't fix ultra-processed eating patterns. It doesn't cancel out poor sleep, chronic stress, or lack of movement. What it does is quietly raise the nutritional floor. It makes it easier to meet baseline needs without thinking about numbers, labels, or stacks of pills. That's not exciting, but it's incredibly useful. If you strip this entire conversation down to one practical principle, it's this. Before you try to optimize your nutrition, stabilize it. Most people jump straight to optimization because it feels productive. Supplements feel like action. Products feel like progress. But stability comes from repeatable habits, simple foods, and consistency over time. A tree that can be harvested year after year and added to everyday meals embodies that principle better than almost any product on the market. This is why Moringa oleifera keeps resurfacing whenever people start questioning the complexity of modern nutrition. It's not because it's perfect. It's because it's sufficient. It fills gaps quietly. It doesn't demand attention. And it doesn't need belief to work. You don't have to trust it. You just have to eat it like food. So does this tree replace multivitamins? In a narrow, technical sense, no. In a practical, lived sense for many healthy adults, it often makes them unnecessary. And that's a very uncomfortable conclusion for an industry built around ongoing consumption. The real question isn't why nobody is planting it. The real question is why we stopped expecting food to do what food has always done. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Nutrition that lasts is boring, local, repeatable, and unbranded. When something grows easily, feeds consistently, and doesn't need to be sold to you, it's usually worth paying attention to. If this perspective was useful, stick around. This channel isn't about hype, shortcuts, or miracle claims. It's about understanding what actually works, why it works, and where modern narratives quietly fall apart. And if there's another overlooked food, plant, or system you think deserves this kind of honest breakdown, let me know. Those are usually the ones worth exploring next. Remember, it's not about how much you spend or how optimized your stack looks. It's about building a foundation that doesn't need constant fixing. And sometimes, the most effective solution has been growing quietly in the background the entire time.